network. Like you can create intents for all these cool things, but at the end of the day, if no one's filling it and you have like all these really niche things that you've created intents for, then it's not going to be a great user experience if like half of the time my transaction succeeds and half of the time it expires and I don't get.
Back to another episode of Talking Intentionally. Today we have myself and Ash speaking with Cody of the UniSwapX team. This is a great conversation because UniSwapX is one of the biggest names in the intent solver space. So without further ado, we're going to hop into that conversation. Thanks again for your time and watching, and I hope you enjoy. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Talking Intentionally. Today we are very lucky to speak with Cody from UniSwapX. For anyone who's been watching us, you know that UniSwapX is one of the biggest names in intents, and we've been looking up to them for a while. So yeah, without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Cody and Ash. Good to see you as always. Would love to hear how's it going. You mentioned you're in Madrid.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Yeah, I'm a nomad, so I actually came to Madrid a couple of days ago. Unfortunate timing with the entire country having a power outage, but you can make the most of it. But yeah, it's been good over here.
Sweet. So I guess just high level, would love to hear your journey into crypto and your journey into Uniswap X. Obviously, Uniswap is just one of the biggest names in all of crypto, without a doubt now. What was it like watching the company grow? And would love to just hear, your journey throughout this process.
Yeah, so I guess starting with how I got into crypto, I was working at Microsoft at the time, and I was working on a team that fights online abuse. And this type of abuse you can think of as like people that are sending you spam or people that are trying to hack into your account. And what we there was a at one day I got a report from somebody that was actually a Microsoft employee undercover working trying to understand this illegal market. And they found that these people, these bad actors were using Bitcoin, something called Bitcoin, in order to trade these Microsoft accounts. And so that was like my first exposure to it, kind of negative, but also like very like technically interesting, how they were using it to get around credit cards and traditional payment systems. And I had like from that team, we were using proof of work and other economic incentives in order to disincentivize these bad actors from attacking us and attacking our users. And so there was an immediate appreciation for the technology and the ability to create this global public good resource that everyone had equal access to, but doing it in a way that it wasn't just fraught with attacks and spam. And so I think when Ethereum first came out, I got really interested in it. There was a team at Microsoft that was working on Ethereum, and this was back in the day with the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance. I worked on that team for a couple of years. We were mostly building Ethereum, like building Ethereum solutions for enterprise customers. Um, this was back in the era of like blockchain, not Bitcoin. So a lot of these big um, big partners were not that interested in disrupting themselves or disrupting their business, which, all of the interesting things in crypto have that piece to it. So I left Microsoft in 2020. I joined the Celo team, building out Celo, which is now a layer two. Worked on a variety of different layers of the stack. And then I took some time off. I was working on various side projects, and I ended up collaborating with the Uniswap team on implementing transient storage into Ethereum. And from that collaboration, I really liked the team. It was like really fun working with them. And so then when I was looking to do something full time again, I reached out to them, and it was a great fit. And so that was about a little over a year ago. And since then, I've been mostly focused on UniswapX, which is Uniswap's intent system.
Yeah, extremely cool journey. And I think as Jacob's not hitting it all, like we're obsessed with Uniswap X. We love all things intense. I think just for the audience, it might be good to hear like when I think Uniswap, I think DEX for trading. what is UniSwapX in like the simplest terms possible. And then if we go down the rabbit hole, lots of changes, of course, like V1, now V2, thinking through some core components, like what auctions look like, how you guarantee stuff. So just a quick crash course for anybody listening. That would be helpful.
Sure. Yeah. So, at a high level, Uniswap X is an auction-based system using intents that allows swappers to tap into better prices, better liquidity. So, to contrast that to the traditional Uniswap experience, when a swapper is trading with the AMM, the automated market maker, they are interacting directly with the contract. And they have to figure out, let's say they're going from token A to token B, they have to figure out the exact route, different pools that they're going to be swapping through to get the best price at the end of the day. And as you can imagine, there's many different pools to choose from, and even more so now with Uniswap v4. And so finding the best route is not always the easiest thing. And also, this liquidity in the pools is constantly changing. And so the whole idea of Uniswap X is we can push that problem away from the user to the professionals, but do it in a way where the user is getting the best price via these auctions. And so an auction, with Uniswap X, we support a variety of different types of auctions, but at a high level, an auction is a way to essentially crowdsource this information from these professional fillers, and they can figure out the best routes. They can tap into different liquidity sources. They can even go to centralized exchanges, and they can use all that liquidity in order to fill the user's order at the best price. And so, if we dive a little bit into the details, what happens during this flow is a user will sign an intent, which in this case it's an auction, saying I want to let's say we're talking about a Dutch auction where the price starts high, and then over time every block it will decay to some lower price. So ideally the user gets the price at the top, but if they don't, then somebody can come in at any point in time and fill that order wherever it currently is. And so they sign this auction. It's just a EIP 712 sign message. So there's no gas for this. They don't actually pay transaction fees. And then this auction that they've signed gets broadcasted to the network of fillers. And this is just open to anyone. And these fillers are all running different strategies, tapping into different liquidity sources. And so as soon as one of them sees that this trade is profitable, then they will take it. They will the user signed order. They will collect the liquidity, and they will send this as a single transaction to the chain. And there's a smart contract that will it's called a reactor within UniswapX, and that will ensure that the user's intent is satisfied as they expressed it. So if let's say we're talking about a Dutch auction and it's been decayed by 3 blocks, there should be a very specific price that that auction can be filled at. And so then the smart contract will guarantee that that amount that the user is getting is sufficient based off of those requirements. And so like that's one example using Dutch auctions, but we also have what's called priority gas auctions, which maybe we can go into a little bit, but it's a really interesting auction mechanism, similar to an English auction, but we leverage priority gas. We leverage priority gas sequencing that is available on certain chains.
On our end, one of the questions we love asking guests is how do you define an intent? You kind of talked through it right there, but if you could do it in one sentence, what would you say is an intent for you?
I think it is a way to really simplify what the user cares about at the end of the day and distill it into something that's enforceable on chain. And in this case, it's the auction saying, I want token X for token Y. I don't really care how you get it to me, where the liquidity comes from. Just get me this amount. And at the end of the day, if you care about user experience, that's all users should really be thinking about. They shouldn't be figuring out like which pools that they're going to be routed through.
Yeah, I love the last part of that definition, like enforceable on chain, because I think it really expands what is possible. Like when I think intense, I think competitive free markets for some job. In your guys' case, like swapping is a very non-trivial thing. Experts can come in, go and do it. But as a user, I have guarantees. So I think my next question is kind of around those guarantees, like followed up until the end of like there's some contract that's checking whatever the price that was agreed upon by the Dutch auction or some other mechanism is what the user actually gets. Like if you can unpack that a tiny bit more, like if I'm a user, I go and I sign this message. Maybe I have like one Ethereum and I'm trying to maximize the amount of USDC that I get, and that's sitting in some contract. Is escrow a right way to think about this? What happens if the guy that won the auction ends up just screwing me and they don't actually go and fulfill it? Is it possible to screw? Of course, there's some fancy stuff. Like I know you guys use permit two and V1. Curious if that's yeah, just like if we could hammer home like how do I have a guarantee and what happens in the world where in theory you have a nefarious filler?
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so um, the one of the big benefits of using Intents is that you don't need to pay gas fees. And so it would be a shame if users had to first, in order to use UniSwapX, deposit and like for that particular trade, that gets escrowed, and if they want to cancel it, they have to withdraw. It's kind of this clunky experience, and so we're leveraging Permit 2, which you mentioned, which is a primitive that Uniswap developed, where it allows you sign a off-chain message, and then it allows the recipient of that message to pull funds from your wallet. Let's say in the case of an ERC20 token, you're able to pull funds from the wallet via the transaction that didn't originate by the user. So you can think of it as like an authorization saying like I allow this contract for this period of time to pull this amount of funds of this particular token from my wallet when they send that transaction. So it doesn't require any action on me at that moment, but I did sign this authorization in advance. And that again, that authorization is off chain using EIP 712. So there's no gas that the user is having to pay. This is going to get even better once we have 7702, where you'll be able to have all this built into the user's wallet. And it'll just be a really nice, seamless experience. We'll be able to support native ETH. It's going to be great. So going back to how UniswapX works, there's no funds that are directly escrowed. The funds sit in the user's wallet, which is nice because until that swap happens, they get to see their balance. They sign this order, which includes the permit two, which allows the filler when they have satisfied the conditions to pull the funds from the wallet. And so the filler, assuming that the auction criteria has been satisfied, they source the liquidity and send the transaction on chain, which collects that liquidity, gives it to the user, and then pulls using permit two, pulls the user's funds from that wallet, and that is all done atomically. So there's no like multi-step process. It's all in a single transaction. So if the filler does not give the sufficient amount to the swapper, that whole thing reverts, and the swapper never loses any of their value. And so that again, going back to that smart contract enforceability, the smart contract ensures that all the conditions are met, that the swapper at the end of the day has the appropriate amount of tokens, and the filler gets the appropriate amount of tokens from the user's wallet. If either party does something malicious, like moving the funds or not providing the sufficient amount, then the order is voided.
Yeah, super cool stuff. And I think that last part's also key. It's like the filler who has given permit two permissions. What if my, I don't know, one wrapped Ethereum that's being used for filling, I just go and spend that on something else. And then now the swapper. And then now the filler has no guarantees on what's going on at all. It's like whole thing still reverts. Um,
Exactly.
quick follow up on this, and this is an infinite rabbit hole, so maybe we don't spend too much time on it. But like, how deep can permit two get when you think about like programming what can be reverted and what can't, or like under what permissions can funds be pulled? I think we met. I think his name was Alan on the UniSwapX team, like way back. Got dinner, and he was getting into like slot values and like storage values specifically, and how you can just get so granular on like if this block header had this exact data and this contract value has this exact value, then this thing can be true. Otherwise, revert. So yeah, I guess without going too crazy, like for you guys, of course, it's like was the destination asset in chain, let's say, fulfilled with what we needed, and if so, pull. But yeah, just how crazy you can permit to get when you think about conditions.
Yeah, it can get crazier than it is today. I'll say that. We have been thinking about a permit three, but um, f for the most part, the way that we think about permit two is that it allows the user to specify a nonce. So this off-chain message the user is signing can't be replayed. It's only going to be usable once. That's obviously important. Another one is that it should be specific to this order. And so when we construct what's called a witness, we take the order object and we convert that into the hash that is the witness that gets sent as part of permit two. So essentially, the withdrawal of those funds from the user's wallet is directly tied to that particular order that they've created, and it cannot be replayed for another purpose. And so I think that's where a lot of the tight specification comes into play for permit two.
I'd like to, kind of learn a little bit more about the Uniswap ecosystem, like writ large. Obviously, Unichain is coming out soon. It seems like it's something that everyone's like paying attention to. Would love to learn a little bit more about like your thoughts on it and how UniswapX will integrate with Unichain.
Yeah, that's a great question. So um, if we take a step back, Unichain is an example of a layer two. Part of Ethereum's scalability roadmap has been focused on almost like this fragmentation of scale rather than directly solving it on mainnet. And it's great in the long run. It's a very good decentralization solution, but you end up with this problem of like liquidity fragmentation, where a user, when they're using Base, they're using Unichain, they're using Optimism, it doesn't really feel like the same Ethereum experience. Like if you go to Solana, it feels like one chain. And so um, what we've been focused on is with intents, we want to make that experience extremely seamless. And Unichain is one of the on the forefront of this type of user experience. Um, when a user is using the Uniswap wallet or web, you don't, you we want the user to think of it as, hey, I have Ether or I have wrapped Bitcoin or whatever token, but I don't have to care about which chain that token exists on. And in order to actually achieve this from a user experience, we need to have the ability to create an abstraction layer on top of each chain, which means an abstraction on top of gas costs and really short, really low latency across when you're moving assets across these different chains. And so we've invested a lot into Unichain for this type of user experience, but we're also working closely with the Optimism team in order to handle some of this like cross-chain interop so that you do have that seamless experience across Ethereum layer twos.
Just out of curiosity, does Across in 7683 come into play as well when you think about the cross-chain stuff? I know that there was a lot that, of course, they're using it for all their intent standards for like filling. I guess for you guys, similar thing here, or yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. So as you mentioned, we did partner with the Cross on 7683. Um, we are currently integrated. I don't know if you've used the mobile wallet or the web recently, but if you swap on Uniswap, you can go from, let's say, ETH on one chain to ETH on another chain, just within the user experience. And with that, for that, we're using these cross-chain intents from across. We're leveling that up so that you can swap any asset to any asset on different chains. And so that will be really cool because you won't, again, have to care which chain you're coming from or swapping to. And so all this will be implemented on this standard that you mentioned, 7683. And one of the cool benefits of having this standard that is across us and across is that all these the fillers, which is these like solvers that are providing liquidity and filling the orders, they just have to integrate with this single standard, and then they can provide liquidity and fill orders across all the interfaces that support this standard. And the reason why that's important is because that helps create this network effect. It ensures that these orders are highly competitive, meaning users are getting good prices. And typically, whenever you're rolling out a new intent standard, the like bootstrapping that filler solver network is one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we'll get to this at the end. We're excited about generalized intents, and even just talking to solvers like last summer, nobody really cares. You're very early. There's nothing. Demand side maybe matters more than that. New standards are key, all that. But maybe a slightly more spicy question on my end. Like, are the auctions still or still off chain? Is there a push to bring auctions on chain? And what sort of when we think about like an end game of permissionless ecosystem, anyone can be a filler. It's a true free for all versus versus today, what steps still need to be filled in for us to get to that world where like anyone can be a filler and users have guarantees for every part of the process. Because I think when I first got into this, I think like, oh, Wintermute fulfills like all the order flow, like fine if they have guarantees on Wintermute, but it'd be cool if it's like totally open and permissionless. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. So two, we have UniSwapX deployed on mainnet and on a set of layer twos. On our layer twos, the set of the filler network is completely open, and so we will take any intent. It's open to any filler, and we broadcast it to the network of fillers, and then there's like competition for them all to solve it. On mainnet, because we want to maintain a really good user experience, we have and on mainnet there's like this really slow 12-second block time. And so if you can imagine like a Dutch order where it's decaying over time over each block, you can only decay the auction along a curve with these 12-second intervals. And so like if you want a user experience where the user is filled within a minute, you only have like 5 points that you can explore to like check what the price should be for this auction. And so it's really important to set the auction parameters correctly. You want the start of the auction to be as close to the actual price as possible, so that you're spending less time exploring for the sake of user experience. Um, so what we do for mainnet is we have this RFQ process where we request a quote from the set of fillers, and then whoever provides the best quote, so it's still very competitive, we use that to set the top of the curve. And based off of that filler has exclusivity for a period of time. If they don't fill it at that price, then it becomes an open auction, and then any of the set of fillers can fill it. This kind of user experience, like providing a good user experience with the constraint of these like slow block times, is very challenging. Like there's this clear trade-off. But I think that if you look at the Ethereum roadmap, you have like pre-confirmations coming, you have tighter block times, which I think are all going to help with this process. And then there's other things that are slightly orthogonal, which is like block building and the builder net. And with those, we could have the ability to have like almost like these sub block intervals that we can use for a really snappy user experience while also having very good price granularity that we're exploring for the auction so that we can guarantee that the user has the best price. So I know that was uh, a bit verbose, but I think it's important to highlight that we do have like these constraints that we're working with, and that helps us find the trade-off between good user experience and giving the user the best price.
No, I appreciate the detailed answer. The second you said like, oh yeah, block times are just long, so UX is terrible if you have to wait for like 10 ticks of an auction or something. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. A final thing for me, and then I'll definitely leave it up to Jacob to talk more about generalized intents and like the future of you guys. Any stats that would be fun that you could share with us and our audience, like stats on like what percentage of Uniswap front end orders are being filled by X or what types of size. We had Danning on the show, I think like a week or two ago, and she had some interesting thoughts on like CowSwap and other protocols. But yeah, just like any stats that you could share would be cool.
Yeah, we're actually putting together a Dune dashboard that Alan, who you mentioned, is putting this together, and so we can share that shortly. There's also some internal research that might be published pretty soon that I think you'd find interesting. So without going into that, at a high level, we have around 10 to 30% of the uh, order flow going to UniSwapX, which is around $10 million in volume per day. Um, the interesting thing, the way that we think about it is not that like Uniswap X is cannibalizing the order flow that would have gone to the AMM, but really they're very complementary to each other. And this is more so with Uniswap v4, because with Uniswap v3 and prior, you have a limited number of pools per pair, like based off of the different fees that you could have. But with Uniswap v4, there's like an explosion of different permutations. You have all these different hooks that people can build. That's another area that I'm really excited to see what builders build. But that further exacerbates this liquidity fragmentation problem, not just across chains, but even within a chain. It makes the routing problem really difficult because who is aware of all the different pools and all the hooks and what they do? And so what's cool about this is that Uniswap X allows the fillers to specialize in different types of pools. And so let's say that you're a hook creator or pool, you have a custom pool that you've created. You can tap into that pool in Uniswap X and become a filler, and that can lead to better prices because you're able to tap into liquidity that other people are not able to. And so this is cool because then you don't, like you said, just have Wintermute that's filling all the orders. You can have this like specializations in these different niche experiments that are running. And it kind of like is a way to let a market figure out which pools are important.
I'm kind of curious to hear like, obviously it seems like Uniswap X is like killing it and done very well. Was there a period of time, and maybe this was before you got in, where it was like still A/B testing and like trying to figure out whether or not like intents were the way forward for Uniswap? Very curious to hear like what the initial conversations were like.
Yeah, I think there's since I joined, there's like no doubt that Uniswap X provides benefit, but there's these different auction types that I mentioned, and you also like want to parameterize the auctions as best as possible. You also have like fillers that are like let's say you launch a new auction type. There's no fillers that are currently supporting it, so you don't know whether the like current price execution that you're getting is going to be the best at the end of the day, or if you just need more fillers to be bootstrapped and kind of join the network. So a lot of the experiments that we do are with these types of parameterization and working with fillers to get them onboarded and integrated so that you have more competition. We look at metrics very closely, and we have some really like interesting routing systems as well as parameterization systems. One of the things I haven't mentioned yet that isn't fully deployed but is in this experimental phase is what we call internally Unimind, which is this it's an algorithm that if you can think of it kind of like a machine learning algorithm that takes for a given pair, the historical trade execution, how long it took to fill that auction, and what the price it was that it filled at. And then it uses gradient descent in order to figure out what the be for future orders. And so you can think of this as like, as markets change and volatility changes, the system can automatically adapt and figure out what the best way to parameterize an auction should be. And so with this, it can be even more fast, good user experience for the user, better prices, and allow us to roll out more quickly to these like longer tail assets.
What is the like process of like proposing a new idea and getting that like going from 0 to 1 like for Uniswap? I feel like in for us, right now we're working a lot on just onboarding solvers, trying to like stir up demand from kind of nothing. I feel like with you guys, when you're launching a new initiative, you have a built-in user base, and probably I feel like a lot of the solvers that exist in the space already want to work with you guys. So would love to hear what like the different challenges are at your guys' level, because I feel like we're pretty acutely aware of the ones that we're facing, and would love to hear in what ways they're similar and what ways they contrast.
Yeah, that's a great question. We try to approach every problem and solution as like scientifically as we can, based off of like some hypothesis that we have that we can measure, and then we will run a set of tests. It could be like A/B tests or like a gradual ramp up, and we look really closely at the data to see whether that data can confirm or refute that hypothesis. And if it refutes it, that's also interesting, and we can go back to the drawing board and figure out why that was the case. So, like you said, because we have this order flow, we have these existing users. Obviously, we want to be very careful and make sure we're protecting the user experience and price execution. But it allows us to perform these experiments that we can apply at scale once we see that they work, and everyone can, get the benefits of that experiment.
So, I think just as like a final question to wrap it up, like we obviously haven't spoken about Axel too much, but we're excited about like super general purpose intents. Like we want competitive free markets for like literally anything at some point. Like an intent for tell me within a minute of is it sunny in New York? An intent for like get me the best iced coffee that I can that's like cheapest according to the constraint being like within 5 minutes of the office. Like whatever it is, you're kind of codifying it. I always say into these like 7683 style JSONs, it probably looks totally different, but like, what are your thoughts there? And if some, as someone who I think critically is so in the weeds of like intense at scale in a crypto context, but with all this data and all this stuff going on, like when you think about like a world that's again leveraging on-chain like verification and like on-chain mechanisms to find counterparties, but still for super real world stuff, like where do you see this going? Is this still like we're very, very far away? Are all the tools in place? And we think like auctions, permit to, ZK stuff for verification, who knows? It's like what is like is there a world where we get towards crazy intents for everyone? Is that even useful? Yeah, just any thoughts on things beyond swaps and interop would be sick.
I love that idea. I would get an iced coffee through an intent. Um, I think one of the bottlenecks there will just be the filler network. Like you can create intents for all these cool things, but at the end of the day, if no one's filling it and you have like all these really niche things that you've created intents for, then it's not going to be a great user experience if like half of the time my transaction succeeds and half of the time it expires and I don't get my iced coffee. So I think it will probably take time for that to happen. It's not, I don't think that's insurmountable. But it will probably grow in kind of spurts where you have really interesting, useful things that are being built with intents, and then you have like fillers that kind of swarm to provide liquidity for those types of things. So I think that's cool. Um, there there is some research work at Uniswap that is not published, but it's along these lines, and it allows you to create these generalized proofs that some action happened. Um, and so I can't go too much into it, but I think something along those lines could work. It's just a matter, again, of the fillers supporting it and whether you have the technology to prove that you did get your iced coffee at the end of the day.
This would be a question for both of you. Do you guys think that the first fillers or solvers for generalized intents outside of crypto will be random third-party people who like have no interest in crypto at all, but just want to go and get someone an iced coffee for like this much money? Or do you think it would be some like crypto native solver that realizes this is a new market that they can capture some alpha in?
I'm going first. I don't think it's crypto people at all. It's like if you have an intent for yeah, like the iced coffee thing, it's like you can imagine existing drivers or for like Uber Eats or like these delivery networks see that there's more to be earned in a different market potentially that has better guarantees for them. Who knows? Yeah, I don't think it's crypto people at all.
Yeah, similar to Ash, I think it's nuanced. It depends on what the thing that's being filled is. If it's digital money, then probably professional fillers are gonna be the best at that market. But if it requires like boots on the ground, then I think it will be like some application that's built on top that allows people to do like a gig economy type experience, and then people can compete to fill the order at the best price at the best time.
So this would be my final question, and I feel like this is something we always go back and forth on internally or just when we're talking with friends. Like, why crypto? Obviously, verification and all of these different things are important. But I think there are other ways. Like we're willing to trust, Uber Eats to deliver food for us. If they came up with batched orders on Uber Eats or made that much better, or some form of like non-crypto related slashing for doing things incorrectly. Uh, why do you think crypto matters in the grand scheme of not just, digital money, but like in this case of generalized intents? I feel like love to hear both of your guys' thoughts on this.
I think one of the biggest superpowers, maybe underrated in crypto, is the open standards that anyone can build on and tap into. And like an intense or generalized intent framework is an example of that. And I think that's one thing that traditional finance doesn't do very well. Where, if let's say somebody with Uniswap before, I think that's a good example of this standard where as long as like you can have some wild idea and as long as you build a hook that conforms to the standard, then now anybody around the world that doesn't even realize that they're using it can start like benefiting from it. So I don't know. I think that's something that's pretty unique to crypto. And the cool thing about that standard is like once it's out there, no one can take it away. People can build on it permissionlessly, and it's not like Facebook can shut down the Instagram API or Twitter API or whatever it is when they decide they don't want to offer this service anymore.
I don't have too much to add. Like I think the phrase that I always come back to is like, how do we mitigate counterparty risk when you think about like a global task engine or like intents used for anything? Like who knows? It's like counterparty risk is so high in most Web 2 related tasks. Like eBay is like a little sketchy to a lot of people when you hear the name, Fiverr, TaskRabbit, Upwork. Like take stuff like take custom flows. Like Ash has this custom flow of like sunny in New York, ice, not sunny, something else. It's like just make that up on the fly. I cannot get that resolved anywhere. It's like I need to build it out myself, or I need to manually do it, or I have to wrangle third parties, and I'm left with like a rigid tool. So I think like custom flows and then like having guarantees on chain, especially when you're dealing with diverse places, it's not just Uber Eats, it's maybe like five different venues or five different task types. I think having guarantees for each of those requires some level of on-chain verification. And yeah, just like mitigating counterparty risk by sourcing all these people. Maybe there's something like permit two. Maybe there's collateral at stake. Like who knows what mechanisms different task types and markets need. But there's like no better place when you think about all the primitives and standards and stuff going on. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, Cody, thanks for taking the time to speak with the Talking Intentionally podcast. Thanks for being a friend of the Axel team. Ash, thanks again for your time. And thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed and found it informative. See ya.
Thank you both. See you.